ياتنا وحسنا كبرتنا حابنا طلعنا ظالم لبحدنا ياتنا وحسنا كبرتنا حابنا طلعنا ظالم لبحدنا طموي كبدي كعنقل كبكرسا كتما قدك ما يكحدسا كعدرو عطا عطا باقون تتحديد كقدتا نطلع يا محل خبرتا طموي كبدي كعنقل كبكرسا كتما قدك ما يكحدسا
ካብ ዝቐፅለ ናብ ዝቐፅል ተዛታያይ ብቐጥታ ክሰግሬ ዶክተር መሓመድ ብርሃን እድሪስ ካብ ሃገረ ጀርመን እዩ ዶክተር መሓመድ ብርሃን ካብ ተቓለስቲ ስድራቤት ተወሊዱ ዝዓበየ ገና ብንእሱ ካብ 16 ዓመት ተምሃራይ ከሎ ትሒዙ ኣብ ናይ ከተማ ስርርዕ ነጥፍ ነይሩ ኣብ ስደት ኣብ ኤሮጳ ምስ ወፀ እውን ኣብ ማሕበር ተምሃሮ ተጋድሎ ሓርነት ኤርትራ ነጥፍ ነይሩ ኣብዚ ግዜ እዚ ድማ ኣባል መሪሕነት ሰልፊ ሕዳሴ ኤርትራ ንፍትሒ ወይ ድማ ሰልፊ ናህዳ ኮይኑ የገልግል ኣሎ ዶክተር መሓመድ ብርሃን ብሞያ ሜዲካል ዶክተር ክኢላ ውሽጣዊ ሕማማት እዩ ብድሕሪኡ እውን ዝተፈላለየ ስፔሻሊቲ ክገብር ዝኽኣለ ምኩር በዓል ሞያ እዩ ንነዊሕ ዓመታት ድማ ናይ ውልቁ ክሊኒክ ኣብ ምክያድ ይርከብ ከምኡውን ኣብ ዝተፈላለዩ ኣብ ዩኒቨርሲቲታት ዝግበሩ መፅናዕታት ድማ ተሳትፉ ይገብር ማለት እዩ ስለዚ ናይ መወዳእታ መዛዘሚት ኣርእስቲ ናይ ዶክተር መሓመድ ብርሃን ክትከውን ኮሊሽን ቢልዲንግ ቤዝድ ኦን ናሽናል ሳቨርኒቲ ትብል እያ ስለዚ ካብ 10 ክሳብ 15 ደቂቃ ኣለዋኻ ትፈደል ዶክተር
Thank you, Leila. I feel very honored to be introduced by you. After all these great speeches and wonderful ideas, I find it very difficult to express or deliver a speech. Nevertheless, I have to wrap up the symposium under the theme Coalition Building Based on National Sovereignty. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very delighted to be here and want first to thank the organizers of this symposium, Sinit and friends of Sinit. I appreciate all the efforts you are unfolding to bring us together in order to make our voices for democratic change heard. Thank you again. Today, as I appear before you to regretfully lament about the grievances of my country and people, I'm filled with profound sorrow. It makes me very sad while I'm sitting here to ascertain that my country is at war. Your young countrymen and women are being killed, wounded, maimed, and disabled. I hope that we here in the light of this tragedy can have the courage to be the best of ourselves and display humility and decency in taking a strong stand of patriotism that ignites hope and reinvigorates the struggle of our people. After every kind of get-together, be it symposium, meetings of Eritreans, our people expect relieving news. I hope we are here up to it. Without dwelling too long and with the purpose of complete depiction of the formation and odyssey of our country and the agony of our people, allow me for a few minutes to reflect on the past. After the conquest of the Italians in 1890, the borders of Eritrea were clearly defined. Italy provided King Menelik with weapons and money, and in return, the king and the Tigrayan nobilities relinquished any claim over the territory Italians occupied. We were sold. Eritreans became bargaining commodity of powers. Eritrea, reluctantly and in keen knowledge of the behaviors of fascists, was handed over to the Italians. This was the first act of betrayal, thus making us victims of all sorts of inhumane treatments, from apartheid, deprivations of all sorts of services, tortures, to killings by hanging. Whether Ethiopia was eligible to trade with the territory is another issue. So, with the clear definition of Eritrean borders, A new geographical entity called Eritrea erupted and inhabitants became Eritreans. This was the beginning of an Eritrean identity, Eritrean nationality, and Eritrean nationalism. We were left on our own and resisted Italian occupation as Eritrean nationalists, for which we alone paid heavy price. After the victory of the Allied force, Italy lost Eritrea. Eritrea was put under the trusteeship of Britain. This was a period of the rise of Eritrean political and democratic consciousness. Political parties, organizations, unions were created. The majority of the Eritrean people opted for independence, just like the other Italian colonies in Africa. The then big powers conspired with Ethiopia and imposed a federal order on us. This was the second betrayal. Let me quote the American Secretary of State, John Foster Dulles. He said, from the point of view of strict justice, the opinion of the Eritrean people must receive consideration. Nevertheless, the strategic interests of the United States, the Red Sea, and world peace make it necessary that the country be linked with our ally Ethiopia. End of the quotation. We Eritreans accepted federal order to remain united as Eritreans and keep our country Eritrea united. On the other side, it must be noted that Eritrea, though a federal state, was the first in Africa to possess democratic government structures with a democratic constitution, elected parliament, free press, and freedom of assembly and expression in the recognized languages, Tigrinya and Arabic. While many countries in Europe were until recently undemocratic, astonishingly enough, Eritrea's relative and short democracy began timely concomitant with the building of democracy in Europe after the Second World War. Again, with the framework of political gains and political bargaining, the federal order was dissolved with the consent of big powers and in violation of international law. Eritrea was victimized on the altar of power interests. This was the third betrayal. This time, humiliation was unacceptable. Eritrean people rose up, carried weapons, and fought for their ultimate desire to be independent. The Eritrean Liberation Front was created, and almost 10 years later, the Eritrean People's Liberation Front. Keeping all the great achievements of the EPLF aside for now, it also magnified the tensions in the Eritrean society, which opened way to dictatorship in Eritrea. After the Ethio-Eritrean War in 1998 and the worsening of the Ethio-Eritrean relationship, the security of the region was increasingly volatile and dangerous. The government of Tigray, in defiance of the decision of the United Nations, occupied and annexed Eritrean territories. On the 4th November of 2020, militias of the Tigray government launched an attack on the Northern Command of the Ethiopian army, who partially fled their country and entered into Eritrea. This was the ignition of the fire of a terrible war with all its ugly faces. Eritrea was driven into the war. The Eritrean Defense Force braved the attack, defended the Eritrean people, and restored the Eritrean sovereignty. In the last 2 years, Eritrea has to endure serious testing moments as a nation. Eritrea sustained strongly and united. It's our profound and firm conviction and an honor in times of war and security threat to stand on the side of our nation and the forces defending our people and our country. As a result, today, Badime is an integral part of Eritrea, and Eritrea was spared of the widespread destruction witnessed in the Afar, Amhara, and Tigray regions. Yes, we stood on the side of our people. We challenged the baseless allegations of genocide because we understood that it is a defamation with all unnecessary consequences for our country and people and would have an adverse impact on Eritrean generations to come. We did everything at our disposal to exonerate our country from reproach of genocide. Eritreans and scholars who allied themselves with the TDF claimed that genocide was committed in the war by Eritrean side, an allegation which was dismissed by the joint Ethiopian and International Human Rights Commission in Geneva. After the Pretoria Agreement and the obligation agreed to stop hate approach, the government of Tigray, the TDF, withdrew the repetitive allegations of genocide. I wonder how these Eritrean citizens who propagated and carried arms against the Eritrean armed force will justify their genocide claims. Yes, we stood on the side of our nation and people because it's an honor. We condemned the missile attacks against the civil objects in Eritrea. But at the same time, we demanded atrocities committed during the war to be investigated by independent and professional agencies. We are of the firm belief that crimes must be prosecuted. Now that the sovereignty of Eritrea is secured, and those who are yearning to control and openly claiming the Red Sea are disarmed and weakened, the Eritrean people should focus inwards. We have serious assignments of democratizing and building our nation. 30 years after the independence, Eritreans are denied the right to elect their leaders, to live in democratic and constitutional state, denied opportunities and privileges to unleash their capacities. Young Eritreans are entrenched in fronts, conscripted to serve the army for unlimited times without perspectives in sight. Eritreans have become properties of the government with no right to express their views. Eritreans are sent into jails without charges being filed against them, and very often indefinitely, sometimes released without explanation and compensation. The economy of the country and the social strengths of the Eritrean society and its values are ruined. The high level of unemployment, lack of security services, desolate health system, absence of basic health services depress the people and force the young, who are builders of the nation and defenders of the sovereignty, to flee the country. So many choose the road to hell, risking their lives across the Saharan desert, suffering from all sorts of humiliations and abuses under traffickers. They get tortured, their organs harvested, females raped, and getting drowned in the Mediterranean Sea. Unfortunately, we have one of the most uneducated young generations in the world. The people of Eritrea live on remittance from citizens abroad, many of whom do not have enough for themselves and live from welfare agencies. Under these circumstances, change is inevitable. Change is inevitable. After all the ordeal and the perseverance of the Eritrean people, change is in the horizon. It is certain that change will come. The laws of social science and the history of social development prove it. No people can be oppressed forever. The issue is, are we adequately prepared? Are we adequately prepared? The future of Eritrea and the Eritreans depends on how we administrate and organize the change. Violent, tumultuous, uncontrolled social upheavals could end in disaster, humanitarian crisis, civil conflicts, and even state collapse. This I call tsunami of change, with the destruction of all government structures and institutions, and even the army, risking sovereignty and exposing it to foreign aggression is tantamount to nightmare. If we let it happen after all the suffering, the betrayals, sacrifice, and the cost paid, this would mark a tragic moment in the history of mankind. We should not allow Eritrea to be a failed state. We should not fail Eritrea. We must realize realities as they are and handle accordingly. Therefore, the storm of change should not overwhelm us. We should direct and organize the change. It should take place in unison, cohesion, inclusiveness, tolerance, and recognition of rights of all. Now, what are the challenges facing Eritrea today? One, dictatorship. Dislodge the government, get rid of dictatorship. Why? Because the government is unelected, the government is illegal, the government is undemocratic, the government is inept, unable to administrate a state politically, economically, and socially. The government has led the people in the country to poverty and social disintegration. The second challenge is the transition. It is a serious challenge. How to organize a controlled, coordinated, harmonious transitional period. The third challenge is to erect a permanent democratic constitutional state. The most challenging one is the transitional period. If the transitional period fails or is not properly managed, a state collapse is imminent. To be fair and sincere, we should acknowledge that the reason for dictatorship in Eritrea cannot be solely put on Isaias and co. By all due respect, the opposition has also its shortcomings. The organizations were unable to prioritize vital issues and are very disunited. We in my party, the Eritrean Renaissance Party for Justice, have launched an initiative which we believe could facilitate peaceful, harmonious, and viable transitional period in unity. The concept is formulated as follows. It consists of 5 columns. 1, unison of action. Bring all opposition groups, political parties, organizations, mass movements, association of women, association of professionals, civil societies, who vehemently oppose foreign forces, intermingling of neighbors in Eritrean affairs, who firmly believe on Eritrean solutions for Eritrean problems, and are committed to defend the sovereignty of Eritrea into one camp under one umbrella, with each group not necessarily dissociating its status. Second, the umbrella chooses an assembly or a council. Third, the assembly or the council elects its executive leaders, preferably technocrats and professionals, and are assigned with duties and performances of daily responsibilities. The executive is to be composed of task force responsible for establishing relationship with the security and armed forces inside Eritrea to make them a part of the change, as well as organizing and preparing Eritreans for change inside Eritrea at the most important one. Action plan can be obtained from experiences of our independence struggle. The second important task force is the force responsible to perform an active professional diplomatic mission. Other task force will be responsible for organizing, finance, rallying Eritreans in the diaspora, etc. This to be decided in details by the executive organ. Fourth, building of a commission of all political parties, political organizations to prepare and organize themselves for a future democratic rule in Eritrea. Fifth, build a council of elderly, Jewish Eritreans, religious leaders, academics, and professionals in pension. This committee does not have any political power. It has a counseling duty and also serves as a moral vertebra and institution to escort the transition. We hope that through a united action, one umbrella, one leadership, sufficient preparations and tolerant dialogue of the political organizations and reflection to our Eritrean values, a successful change transition is possible. This will enable us to establish a democratic, prosperous, peaceful Eritrea. A democratic and peaceful Eritrea has enormous potentials for peace in the Horn of Africa. Long live Eritrea, Eritrea for Eritreans, eternal memory for our martyrs. Thank you.
يغنيلنا دكتور محمد برهان دارجا لك عبد زي خزازيب كزلها أقاطعمي بقنقو إنجليزية يتداليو إرترا زحلفتو بدهوتات زلو تسعقماتن مفتحيهم كونو زخلو أمامتاتن يمكن قلت أنيهم من البات ترقا ما يلينا نخول مانياتو قتسئلو زسعب دكتور بيان نقاش تسوما نايزا بجل حموشتي كون سلازي ناب دكتور بيان بقطع حلفكم دكتور بيان
يا كسبت عشرون قورة.
Okay.
كاميرا انت تمسن. Thank you ليلى. Another تعشمو انت بهال حجي عندما كرمت زي تعشمو زي Symposium. And حجي هذا دكتور محمد برهان لما رأينا ما شاء الله. This is the kind of gathering that we've been aiming. حجي kind of rubbed me a different way. بالإنجليزية خزارة بكجمهري مثلاً. At any rate, this is good. نتي ندليو زلناسي تسألي نا إرترا نهلت كتمت جميرة اللامات. فبستفل عليه background متينا تهاجر إرترا تبهال دريخاتنا تأكيبنا كمزيلنا بغاشم رئي بقدميون تمن إسيات عن تويد زل عالكوم رئي مس دكتور أماني المحرثة أب مس أمباشادر عند برهان أمونغو تم من إسيات عن توي أمونغو زلو زي عزوز زخونة عدليو hopefully أخيبات رأي كوينا خي تترف إيتي نقر كدم حجر إنا نخندي عامتات نجمر نودع نجمر نتسن بزح حفكف حالي في إمو حجي hopefully بخلت أجرنات أطويلنا رأي زي كونه نقدميث نتأمتهلو كم تحجنا دانيال زبلونا برأي صحف ونام بيباني it was an excellent piece صحافة وين حذين بكم اللهم كنكم أبستي تلاتكم دانيال تخلاي انتهتوني Eritrean new chapter new ideas. It's really a wonderful piece. So it will open تعشمو نحسب عدل كبرنا إمالتي just in passing mention كجبرايلي نبتي نايلوم معلت خملس كوين تخوينا خابت مالي نلومي نتصبح نتي توهبونا ودسب انتايو فيلسوفر في جرماناوي زبلسي يونيكس قبلنا سي ندحريت أميتنا نغميت أميتنا أبز جزية زلنا خوين ناسي we're able to كنا كوماسع نخلت تلزلنا كابتناي باستا ماهيركا نفيج حجز اللي خايو مزينكا نقدميت خيط كله خو بزي ناي تمالنا يلومن جمجيمة انتاي بروجكت خقبر يخلني فيشر أباينا بس إحنا زلنا سلازي تاسكالا سي تساريعة لنا الله كل أن تنزد الله يازنا برا ايدياتات منشن تغيرنا الله أبزي حجتي قدا انت ايزخون كاب سنيت يخون كاب كالوت صوميقكا حادة نقدميت زت أمة صحف نخوات مورنا يلوم متسمع زي كنا زي قد سن مغنياتو كل هالناس اللي سمعنا فيديو نكوت سلازخونه I think critically important كوينات تسمعني تي زنبرة نايز حلفة سنكلكلات نعو على لينا نزل لنا يحج قرنا تطويلنا يزل لنا كميجا ما هم نسقمهم نسقوهم كمان حجي ندحريت من ملاس كنتي عنتو يذبها لنا بري نايم الناس نايم كفالن بزح قفعتات زوردو كنتي دكتور أماني الزقولت أزنا بري حجون تخونه بدكتور محمد برهان زتبه له كم أون بتي حيلي نايتي قدوا بعدنا ري خايلو عبد الرحمن زقولت أنا بري بهاشم كم أون تي من إسيات زبلو نبرو نجهز زلعلنايو ناتاتو منا بقمة أتي خاسي الله تسأل خلا الله أب هورن أوف أفريقيا إرترا خم هاجر كوينات أو تبلو منجدي مش كله قروا بتاب سلام تنبر again and again تمتسجن تاتمرتي يعني الحجي والعا ودحادة عامت لما زولد دحر 10 عامت دحر 3 عامت انت عينت زيقا إرتراوينا انت عينت زيقا إرتراوينا ندلي زلنا زبل حتو كن مل شوخن كلا لنا وكنت أنا تزيكي إلنا كل جزء ندحريت كن السحابين كان محجي قليت يعني أمريكاويان انتاي غيرهم مجمر يعني زهاجر مس وسدو خاب أوروبا متيهم تيز قبروز نبور انتاي ندحريتكم اللي سخفيهم عاد إنجليز كتمو تخفيهم أوروبا هتمو تخفيهم حجتهم ترانسندنتاليزم زبلات حساس بحيزم زمتو ناهنا ستوري كرييت نقبر لنا نفيوتشرز تمتي لهم نيل انت عينت هاجر سريحة مالي قلتمي تسلسلمي تعمت حالك حجي خا إرترا أبقى أزل بتاع تقاراني من قدي ناي عند برهان مصحف تايتل كلك أحا أبتها تقاراني من قدي نازل لنا تقاراني من قدي خا نسقرا دلوات كم زلنا سير رأيكا كله تي element سالو كميجر كانوا أكيب كحجي تمعلو توعلي نتي تسقطت كجبر زلو تسقط تجبرلو كنت عن تويز حاتتكم سخما مأكل زلهم أبتلعل زلون بعد ما زعززو تمكرو زلو مالو أبتحت له خاز الدنا جرو زلو نعاتهم كأخم يجر كاتحس سقاتكم هم مأكلكم كم قلو نخلو خط أمرو تخلو زملو من يجهو تزاربنا وركم تمال تزاربنا وركم تما أبلع زلو أنا بعد ما هون بتمكرو مونغو زلنا هون بأخذكم ياخذ من راحة متجرش لذي تا شخمنا باخم ياخذ ورد ناصرونا يحمى أنزر له حجة كمان تقربت ورقة الله بحسابات أمي أخذ نقرنا بالإنجليزية صحفت الله حفتنا كوسر سو ناون تأمت يغني لنا طرحين مبالغ really أنا بحكي خالق نتيلسي كك نتيجة تبع له سوق إلى حنفش كبلة زي كوينو نعن حزنا بعزز منقدي ننببن نرأين نسمعايو كم بحدش شعومتنا بحدش حساب بحدش منفس كن بقس زياتها نهرمت أذلا let's take advantage of it. Thank you. That's all. Oh, by the way, for the first time بزعبة إرترا خنزارب finally كابت قراي وتينا بزعبة إرترا تمالي لو من صباح بالله لنا this is a wonderful reprieve. Thank you. Thank you, Sinit.
يغني لنا دكتور بيان أزيو زحقو سيوناي بحقي أبتحتي تسأل هاجراونتن ኡማውነትን ኮይና ብዛዕባ ሃገርና ከምዚ ዓይነት ዓሚቕ ዝኾነ ዘተኽነ ካይድ ምኽኣልና ዓብ ዓወትዩ ኣዝዩ ንቕድሚት እውን ተስፋ ድፍኢትን ዝፈጥር እዩ የቐኒልና ካብ ዝቐፂለ ናብ ካብቶም ሓደ ካብ ኣዳለውቲ ወይ ከዓ ኣወሃሃቲ ናይዚ ሲምፖዚየም እዚ ዝኾኑ ኣቶ ናስር ዑመር ዓሊ ክሰግር ሓበራዊ መግለፂ ሲምፖዚየም 2023 ስኒት ከቕርበልና እዩ ናብ ማይክሮፎን ናብ ናስር ዑመር
Okay, سلام. Actually حبراو مقلة يكون سي درافتيو. أدمينا بتاعنا أكتوال سيشن كنا محلافنا. بتي بجمع يا خنجم خلاصي أخيبا تسام عنا له مالتيو حبراوي مقلة حزنا إلى هنوتس. السخاء أبتنا 4 panelist كساب حجي زغربو تمركزنا هنا. So دحري مودة نايزان 4 مالتي كم درافت تقريبا زلوا حبارة ومجلس اللومو حفتنا كوثر تي درافت ختم بولكم يا بدحريو تي ناي حتى المرسن كغتصليو أب موجو أبزي زي قربة درافت كود كملا الله تبلوه وي أي تسامعنا له نزي تبلوه وانت الله خينو قدمي زي نايرم مع السيمبوزيوم مودو ببرايفت نباي صحفوا لي أو قلت تقايلوا هم أنا تزاربوا له تقولي هم أبزي بدحريو أنت لا تسامعنا له أكل نايت زوج بريس ريليز يقون مالتي ويغني لي نابكو سرك على الفوكم يا مالتي عليكم الشيء
يغني لنا
Okay, سمعنا لهم؟ سمح له ليلى؟
معنا يا كاتسلي
Okay, سمع له. All right, it's a draft. Okay, very important. Draft, yeah? Okay. It's a draft, the Dallas Sinit Symposium 2023. We, the participants of the Sinit Symposium 2023, recognize the importance of celebrating, safeguarding, maintaining, and strengthening the Eritrean nationhood, ኡማውነት. We also believe, okay, as one of you needs to, yeah, okay. All right, I'm going to start over. That's okay. All right. Again, the Dallas Sinit Symposium 2023. This is a draft. We, the participants of the Sinit Symposium 2023, recognize the importance of celebrating, safeguarding, maintaining, and strengthening the Eritrean nationhood, ኡማውነት. We also believe coalitions based on common understanding of Eritrean nationhood and national sovereignty, as well as the respect of rules of law, democratic principles, and universal human rights advance a lasting peace for Eritrea. Therefore, we encourage efforts like the Sinit Symposium in order to build broader coalition that help to effect change and the transitional period in Eritrea. With regard to the current political situation in Eritrea and the government of Eritrea, while we congratulate the Eritrean people and its defense forces in averting the imminent threat that was posed by the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, TPLF, we also would like to underline that the status quo is an equally imminent national security threat to the sovereignty of the state of Eritrea. Therefore, it is prudent that the Eritrean government takes the necessary steps that pave the way for reconciliation both at home and in the diaspora in order to start over building their nation. This starts by going back to the status quo ante by reinstating the institutions that were suspended after the border war in 1998. We therefore agree to pursue a vision of peace, security, and prosperity for Eritrea through the needed paradigm shift in building a broader coalition based on shared interests and commitments written in blueprint. In this spirit, we eagerly welcome and are encouraged by the progress already made in broadcasting the coalition under the principles of national sovereignty based on common understanding of Eritrean nationhood. ኡማውነት. Eternal glory to our martyrs. Sinit Symposium 2023. Thank you. Dallas, Texas, March 19, 2023.
يقنلنا كوثر يقنلنا زينا نمسكن سلازي بقتا نابتي ناي حتون ملسن مدرخينا خنسجر
ياتنا وحسنا كبرتنا حابنا طلعنا صنم لمحدنا ياتنا وحسنا كبرتنا حابنا طلعنا صنم لمحدنا كيش بحري هطم قما سفيح بركز عدلا قرما تباقين كفالا خبسا بعد شم ولادي طبسا عد خبت مرتاحة حساب كنداي جقنا حالف وبجاء كبر أكر سنكيلو نعا ندم منه ستهن تسرى نسرح الله بحنقل بقلبه نسرح الله بحنقل بقلبه يا الله وحسنا كبرتنا حابنا طلعنا ظالم لمحدنا برهان